And that's why Scott should never let Beavers operate his phone.
Yes, that's true. Hello, good evening on this August the 6th, Monday night. It's season 3, episode 32. We're live here with Chuck and Ralph and Josh on Keystroke Medium. Scott is in Denver on vacation, and he has no signal. I'm not sure what's going on with his phone. Either Skynet has destroyed him, or he has no cell phone signal. One of the two. I'm going to go with Skynet myself.
I'm thinking Skynet. Absolutely.
Probably a combination.
Ultra dramatic.
And I, for one, welcome our robot overlords.
No, you don't either.
Depends how much they're paying.
Right. Well, we'll see if Scott jumps on here after a bit, and we're still waiting for some live viewers to trickle in now. So, hey, everybody, how you doing? Glad you could come and hang out with us and talk about epic endings today. We talked about epic beginnings last week. I almost said epic climaxes, and I knew somebody was going to take it that way. I knew, and so I just left it off. I didn't even say it, didn't even bring it up. Epic climaxes are not the way to go.
Is Ellen here? Because I think she'll jump on that.
Oh, she would jump all over it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really,
no, you got away with it from the look of things.
So I've got a really cool piece of it's news this week before we jump into our topic. It's probably a couple months ago now. I was on Ella Barnard's podcast, Author Like a Boss.
Yeah, I'm scheduled for that one.
Yeah, and apparently I said some really cool stuff.
You did.
I always wonder about, like, when I'm rambling, is anything what I'm saying coherent, and does it make sense? And probably most of the time it doesn't. But apparently I said something really cool this time.
Yeah, the thing about the glass. That was awesome.
Yeah, Scott said that too, but that's not the quote that I got quoted on.
Oh, okay.
So this is the first time for me, so this is really cool. I am quoted in a book.
Whoa.
And yeah, that's what I said.
What book?
So Ella is writing a book. It's Start Marketing Your Book. And she has written it based off some of the stuff that she's learned on her podcast, and I think in her regular life and job and experience. But she quoted me, and I don't remember the chapter that she quoted me. I'll see if I can find it. Let's see, page 25.
Like you haven't got that bookmarked all to how.
I was about to say, yeah. you know he's looking straight at it right
now.
No,
but I had to open it on my email. So, all right, silence. Chapter 4, cooperative marketing. And then this is the quote. They say writing is a lonely career, and it can be, but it doesn't have to be. The bigger your community is and the more you're willing to put yourself out there, the better you're going to do in the long run. And then it's Josh Hayes, indie author. And I'm like, pachow! Just got quoted in a book.
That's awesome, man.
And that's like the coolest thing ever. So thank you, Ella. I really appreciate that.
She sounds like she's going to be on one of those.
You need to be on one of those, those motivational posters and like a picture of, I don't know, an icicle
right.
or something, and then that. And Josh Hayes.
Like perseverance.
You sure it's not one of those like demotivation posters? Yeah. Like, that dude's carrying the beer, but then it's spilled all over the street. Yeah.
So that was. There's one where there's a guy. It looks like a SWAT entry to a building, a dynamic entry we'd call it, DA, where you've got a load of sort of like black-clad SWAT guys. They're all got their M4 rifles, and there's just a guy in the middle with 2 handguns. It's like dual wielding. One day you'll be as cool as this man. And that is you.
That's right. I am dual wielding the air quotes, baby. That's super cool. That was the cool thing that happened to me this week. Before we jump into the topic, Chuck, anything interesting happened to you this week, brother?
Well, actually, on a very, I had a really good review day. I got just a super outstanding review on the first Brace Cordova book, and on the same day, I got a 5-star write-up on Master of Hounds. But the one on Cordova came at a I was struggling with some discouragement, you know, all that shit we talked about before, and that thing came at just the right moment, and it just reminded me that it's not always about the sales and the stuff. Because I mean, that guy basically read the exact book I was trying to write, and he told everybody, and that was exceptionally cool. And my kids went back to school today, which means I get my days back, so that's nice.
I had a brief vacation. My wife came home a day early, and so I had her home for 4 days. And I was like,
nice.
Oh, this is so nice.
Just exhale.
And then she left again, and my son had like the worst day ever today. So, happy me!
Yay!
What about you, Ralph? Anything fun happened to you this week?
Not really. This normal kind of cop life of chasing naked people around and that kind of stuff. Like just a random events.
Well, you know, in context, that might not be. I don't know.
The coolest thing though for me was Jamie, my cover artist. I say my cover artist. That makes him sound very possessive. I'm more his author than he's my cover artist. I think now I've accepted my place in life. But he's like he's put as people who've been following it, he's been doing loads of art for my new projects. And one of the things he's done recently is been experimenting with video. So he's got an awesome little video that of one of the fighter spacecraft in my books, sort of just soaring over a landscape. So he produced that, and it looks bloody brilliant. So again, massive shout out for Jamie. I've sent the link across to Josh to circulate if he so wishes, so people can have a look. But it just goes to show that you know the stuff that people can do is absolutely fantastic. And if you need a cover, hire Jamie, because he's bloody brilliant at what he does. So,
did you send the link to me just now, or were you going to? Because I don't see it.
I'll press return now.
There it is.
There, just popped up in mine.
That helps. That helps sometimes. Occasionally, that helps. I will share that in the live chat here, and you guys should be able to click on the link and go check it out. I'll post it in the Facebook group too under this show. So if you've seen the announcement for this show and you're watching it, you can go back and find this. It's a really, really cool video. I love the artwork that he's doing for your book series. I'm just wondering when the book series is going to come out. Any news for that? Where are you at on book one?
Book one is I've kind of done the first and second draft. Book two, I've done the first draft. Book three, I'm working through the first draft, and because I want to do rapid releasing, so book one comes out, then book two a month later, book three a month after that, for marketing reasons more than anything else. So you've got that constant kind of slam. People want their content quick and very quick at the moment. But what I would say for the keystrokers amongst us, once I get book one done, I'll happily send it across to you. That'll be sort of many months in advance of when it will come out on Amazon. So I'm more than happy to send that across to our audience for having a read at. Anyway, that's where we're at. So in terms of when it will get released, we'll probably, realistically, we're going to be looking into next year now, 2019, early 2019, I'll suggest.
I'm really excited for that series just because I know the scope that you're trying to do with that, and then all of the engagement from the other authors that you have kind of following you along in the project. So I'm really cool, especially with the artwork. There's so much stuff that you can do with this promotion wise, and I mean, even like you could. How many book trailers have we seen that are just like ridiculously dumb? But this, like that whole thing is a book trailer in and of itself. You can just put that out there and share that, and that content will get people driving to your book. That is cool stuff, I think.
Well, it kind of fits in. Just briefly before obviously we get onto the topic, but it kind of fits in with what you said for your that you quoted earlier in terms of banding together as authors. This is a universe that's kind of set up without being egotistical, so that other authors can come in and they can take part in it if they so choose to. It's designed from the ground up for that purpose. So, so if anyone's got a good idea about where they want to take it, and then please message me. But in essence, it's a military science fiction series. So there we go.
I think when that book gets close to coming out, we'll need to do 1 or 2 shows probably on the scope of it and get people kind of excited about the deal, because it is kind of a really neat deal. I mean, basically it's World War II in space, right? So if you know anything, if you like that time period, but you also like military science fiction, you can just look over the breadth of stories that they have revolving around World War II in any of the theaters and create a story in space about it. So it's really neat, a really, really cool idea.
Yeah, and that's absolutely nailed it there. And the idea, like, one of the problems with doing a joint up universe as an author is sort of having some form of coordination in the story. Now, fundamentally, I'm a pretty lazy guy. So if someone can give me, if someone can give me a structure to work to, then that's even better for me. So what I've said is I've kind of redefined. So say for example the Nazis. The Nazis are the Neos who are conquering various areas of the cluster, which is Europe. Over you've got the Kingdom, Britain, who are kind of having a last-ditch effort to sort of defend what remains of the cluster. Over the other side of the cluster, you've got the people, which is the Russians, who are kind of sort of looming there, and are they going to be good? Are they going to be bad? What's going to happen with them? And meanwhile, far away, you've got the Federation, which is America. They will inevitably get involved when another faction called the Empire are going to attack them in a surprise sneak attack, which will happen on, I don't know, at the moment I've called it Onyx Base, but basically Pearl Harbor kind of attack, and that'll crack off that sort of thing. It's fundamental. So it's a realised world, and strategically, so the guidance notes for anyone wants to come to the series would be that they would be just pick an event from World War II, make sure it roughly kind of fits into the technology base that I'm providing, and then tell that story. Or even sort of kind of fictional stories. So if someone wants to do taking it to the outer extreme, sort of like a Saving Private Ryan kind of thing, or even an Indiana Jones kind of thing, where you're trying to get an artifact and get to it before the Neos get to it, then anyway, so that's that world. Anyway, we're focusing far too much on that when
I like
early.
But, no, dude, that sounds like a completely fleshed out kind of really massive, like you said, well realized world. That's awesome. The nice thing is sort of obviously you've got the overall arc, and you can say as long as generally what you write fits in with the strategic outcome of what actually happened in World War II, I'm good with that. I don't need to micromanage that. You can't have suddenly the Germans winning the Battle of the Bulge, for example, or right.
You can't have the Bismarck beating the fleet in the Denmark Strait or whatever. It's got to roughly fit in so that it doesn't upset the overall timeline. But I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the research as much as anything else, because I've learned so much about World War II, which I didn't know.
I can imagine.
From the outside.
And then that's not a small topic.
No.
That's kind of like saying, I know everything about anatomy. No, you don't.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that. That's the perfect. I could be a doctor now. Oh, I could be a World War II story. Of course, I bloody can't. But I can the things that I've learned about the
Yeah.
stories people have to tell are just amazing.
Right.
And
I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Before we
Well,
dive into our topic, I just want to say I've been doing this show with you guys for, going well over a year now, I'm sure. And I've seen your backgrounds and your things morph and change and get the shelves and the posters, and they all I've watched them evolve over time. But I've got to say, my favorite thing recently is that trash can.
I knew as soon I started looking as soon as you started saying it, I started looking in my bag. So there's a story behind that. And the story is that my son absolutely loves throwing things in the trash can. So like my little Harry Potter figure was in the trash can earlier. My Iron Man figure was in the trash can earlier. And then he was reaching in and taking Gatorade bottles out of the trash can. So I just finally set it up there while he was down here, just kind of avoid the problem, and then didn't put it back down. So that's not a constant, like, permanent fixture.
Well, I thought you just put like a Keystone Medium logo on the side and call it,
I should do that.
You know what? I'm probably being a really bad cop here in terms of, I don't see the obvious. I'm looking like a little bit too much into the detail and trying to, because so I did not see the trash can because it's too big. It's like, no, I'm seeing the trash can. Can't possibly need to see the trash can in this scenario.
No, you can't.
That's pretty good.
That's epic.
Pretty good.
And speaking of epic, I just created my own segue.
Yes, you did. Well done.
Last week we talked a little bit about beginnings. We talked a lot about beginnings, and this week we decided we were going to talk about epic endings. And then Rick Partlow actually brought up a good point in that endings and climaxes and finales sometimes are not the same. Sometimes they are different. So sometimes you can have a climax and an ending. And so for the purposes of this show, everything's on the table. And
including the trash can.
And including the trash can, which is on the table as well.
I'm sorry.
So we're going to talk about books, and we're also going to talk about TV shows and movies. We wanted to kind of bring it. Basically, they're all written, right? All the shows and movies are written by writers. So we think it counts. We're not strictly.
We're more interested in stories at this point,
right?
Than the medium.
So I came up with 4 kind of categories, and there's probably a lot more that I'm not thinking of. When you look at an ending / climax, and that's a twist ending, a ambiguous ending, a ending that's cyclical, kind of Ralph actually brought that one up, and then an ending that is just it blows your mind, right? My first pick I'll skip and we'll do later, and my second pick is Harry Potter. And the book series of Harry Potter, the ending of that, which is not just the final battle of Hogwarts between Harry and Voldemort, I actually like the movie better, movie version better than the book version. I don't know if you guys have ever read the books. I've read the books twice just because I love the Half-Blood Prince, and I love the story of Voldemort, and Snape actually is one of my favorite characters. But in the movie, in the books, the ending, the fight between Voldemort and Harry is very, very short. It's very short. It's you could blink and you would miss it. And in the movie, the entire 7 films before it just kind of builds up to that whole conflict. And the way that, they craft, and even in the story, they craft a little bit of a cyclical kind of Harry has got to. Oh, by the way, before we get into any of this, and I'm going to put a spoiler alert on the show notes. Everything we're going to say is spoilers here. So if you haven't read Harry Potter or any of the stories we're going to talk about, watch the show after you've read the books, because I'm going to talk about spoilers, and this is I'm switching our repertoire up because I'm not waiting to the end to say that we're spoiling something. I'm doing it at the beginning. So don't yell at me when we spoil your book. Snape kills Dumbledore. So in the end of
you need to give it a little bit more of a delay there. I
think. In the end of Harry Potter, you have Harry Potter confronting Voldemort, and you have all these scenes that lead up to Dumbledore setting Harry up to succeed. And the way he sets him up to succeed is that Harry's got to die. And that's like crazy, because he set up this whole series with the Horcruxes, that we have to destroy the Horcruxes because Voldemort has split his soul into all these Horcruxes because of the people that he's killed and the way that he's become immortal. And it's one of those endings that makes sense, and it brings all of the books together, because of course Harry had to have a part of Voldemort in him, because he can talk to snakes, because he can read inside his mind, because all those things point to that direction. It's not just and Harry's a part of Voldemort. They built it up through the entire series. So when it happened, it's what, like Scott likes to call, the inevitable ending. It's surprising but inevitable. And so when you build up to that end point where you learn that Harry has to die for Voldemort to die, that makes sense. It's not just a dramatic, like, oh, okay, the hero's got to die, whatever. It actually makes sense in the entirety of the story. Yeah. And so what happens, and then he has this little deal with Dumbledore, and he comes back. In the book, it happens really fast. In the movie, there's a whole dramatic, epic thing that happens. But I really, really liked that ending, that book. And it's not the final ending. Obviously, they go into the future and you see Harry's kids and stuff. But the ending and the climax of that book was just so well. That story is so well and beautifully crafted that I wish that every ending was crafted just like that, because it's great.
Well, I mean, that's what a good ending does, though. It takes all the things that have come before it, even the little things you may not have completely thought of or noticed, and then ties them up in a big bow in such a way that the reader's like, oh, shit, of course. Yeah, that you know, that's a satisfying ending. It doesn't just kind of taper off, and it's no Deus Ex Machina or any of that crap. You know, it's the bow on top of the story. Yeah, and it ties everything together. I mean, that is what a satisfying, even if there's a little, like if you're writing a series and there's a little bit of a teaser or whatever for what's to come next, for that book, everything kind of comes together and is satisfying. There's no unanswered questions that are pressing. So and that's a great example.
I think your phrasing there of "come together" is absolutely perfect. So, just for people who might not know terminology, a Deus Ex Machina ending is where, I don't know, you've got your heroes sort of wandering towards a destination. They've got to kill the bad guy or whatever. They stand absolutely no chance. And then something, whatever it might be, just completely comes from left field and saves the day. And it almost doesn't feel like the heroes have had any kind of particular influence on it. It just randomly comes across and just sorts whatever the issue is out. Whereas what you said, Chuck, is sort of like it tightens up everything. So you might have loads of disparate pieces of information. You're wondering why is that relevant? Why is that relevant? Why do I need to know that all throughout the story? And then suddenly, bang! It's like someone has just tightened the bow and like drawn together all these pieces of information, and that comes to the resolution. I suspect, or more accurately, I hope, that is, say, what will happen with Game of Thrones, where you've got I know it's been resolved down, but originally you had dozens of different factions and characters, all off in different directions. Slowly, that's been whittled down through through just being Game of Thrones and
attrition,
like,
basically.
Not surviving.
I don't know what to do with this story. He's dead.
Yeah, but I would hope that sort of like still the things that are left outfield are going to just tighten up suddenly, and we will get that resolution to. Already we've got it down from like a dozen or more factions to 3, haven't we? As we're moving into the final season of Game of Thrones, we've got Cersei's crowd, we've got the Night King, and then we've got Daenerys and Jon Snow. So that is happening, and it will probably happen even more. We know that they're going to have to resolve the Cersei situation. We know they're going to have to resolve the Night King situation, which is more critical to the peace and stability of the land. Well, actually, the Night King is more of a kind of existential threat, but Cersei might be more of a long-term threat. We don't know at this point. One is the soul of the land, one is the existence of the land, and neither can be allowed to continue being a threat. Anyway, so we know that's coming to a resolution.
I'm glad that you brought
I really love your terminology of tightening it up, because it feels like that is everything slamming together and making the ending work.
I really like that you brought up Game of Thrones, because it lets me talk about one of my favorite episodes in season 6, and that's The Door. And that's when Hodor holds the door for Bran and what's her name? I can't remember now, to escape. And you see Bran doing one of his flashbacks, and he sees Hodor as a boy, and he's just a regular normal boy, and he talks fine, and he's interacting with his mom, and then he looks over and he sees Bran in the vision, and they have a connection. And then Bran, I don't know exactly if he like comes into Hodor's body in the vision, and it's like a double jumping or what, but you have this whole scene where he falls over, and then he starts saying, hold the door. And it goes on until it mashes into Hodor. And that whole thing it seemed like a nothing point. Why is this dude named Hodor? No one knows. No one cares. That's all he can say. That's all anybody knows about him, Hodor. And everybody just thinks he's this just stupid stable boy, and he's mentally retarded and whatever. But when you get to that scene and you feel that connection with the character, and then he falls over and he starts saying, hold the door, and it morphs into Hodor, that emotional like gut punch. I watched that scene like 8 times, and I was just like dumbstruck about, holy crap, that was amazing writing, because you didn't see it coming at all, but you're like, of course, that's what it is.
And you're right, just to sort of like add a sort of appendix to your comment. We're talking about epic endings, but perhaps we need to sort of define that point down to endings of arcs, and that is perhaps the ending and the beginning of Hodor's or Holdor's arc.
Yeah,
we've got that absolute resolution. His whole purpose was to protect Bran at that point. Everything. We don't know what role Bran is going to serve in the final season. He's kind of made out that he's going to be. Scott's ringing.
Hi, Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Leave me alone, Scott.
We're trying to do a show, Scott.
We got a question
on the show.
Let's see about that. Where is it? Dean Floyd wants to know: do you guys consider climax, finale, and denouement to be part of the end? Is the entire third act the end? I would say no. I'd say everything after the ultimate big climax finale on the way down, I would consider that the end. What about you guys?
I think that two points to this. There's the climax and there's the end, and I think they're two different things. Now, what I'll take from Dean's question there is you've got the climax, which is the entire third act, roughly, is the ending. Now, this is harkens back to something that Scott did say once, or several times, I think, which is that by the point you reach the third act in a story, all your ducks should be in a row. There should be not any particular surprises about how your heroes are going to solve the problem. They're still going to have challenges which they need to overcome to defeat the Dark Lord or conquer the land, whatever it might be. But still, roughly speaking, all the ducks should be in a row. There should be no particular surprises, because then you get into what we said before, which is the Deus Ex Machina, which is just something randomly coming out from outfield. Now, That's not to be said. You might still get like kind of a Riders of Rohirrim kind of situation where you've got kind of like you've got your X bunch of heroes who are having a desperate last stand. Your Y bunch of heroes are trying to recruit your Riders of Rohirrim to come in and save the day. But still, your ducks should be in a row. Now, the ending for me is something that happens after the climax, and that is you kind of wrapping up the story a little bit. Now, this is something where I don't like to denigrate a well-loved story. This is something where perhaps Lord of the Rings banged on a bit. You've got after the climax of the story, the ring's been destroyed, Mordor's sorted out, Sauron's being given a good kick in, and then you've got like 300 pages and or in terms of the movie, best part of half an hour of just faffing around,
right?
which is the ending, and perhaps that could have been a little bit tighter. But that being said, you still want to have the opportunity in a long story, whether that be a single novel, whether that be a trilogy, whether it be a longer series, say goodbye to the people you've spent a long time with. And I think that is also equally important. That is something. Can I bring forth Battlestar Galactica now?
Absolutely, you can.
Of course, always.
Yeah. So for me, Battlestar Galactica, the series, the recent series, has been a really well crafted story. You had multiple facets to it. Obviously, the primary story is a war between the humans and the Cylons, but you had like the internal politics of the humans. You had the internal politics of the Cylons. Once it came to the final episode, like the internal politics of the humans have been dealt with. The internal politics of the Cylons have been resolved down to we've got good Cylons, we've got bad Cylons, and basically it bottomed down to what I, as a viewer, wanted, which was a bloody big battle. And I wanted special effects. I wanted to know that every last bit of budget they had was being spaffed up the wall.
That's actually a really good point, because I think in situations like that, if a writer comes up with some very well crafted ending that flows and makes sense, and it's the story that's in his head and all this, but he totally disregards what his readership is probably wanting. Like if he's writing military sci-fi and they want that big final space armada battle, but he tries to, and he comes up with some just, maybe it's brilliant, maybe it's smart diplomatic solution. You can't, that's not really a good ending, because you're not thinking about the audience that you're trying to serve.
Well, it's like you said with the Deus Ex
Deus Ex Machina.
Deus Ex Machina, yeah. Woo! If you write a
game 3 times,
I can't.
Nice.
I'm not even gonna try. If you have a zombie novel and all the characters are fighting the zombies and the zombies are overrunning them, and the whole time you've boasted this as like a post-apocalyptic zombie novel or whatever, and then all the main characters are getting overrun, and then an alien and a UFO appears and like death rays all the fucking zombies. That's not a cool ending to your book. You may thought it was cool, but it's not gonna be cool. So sorry, Ralph, go ahead and go with your BSG stuff, because I love BSG. I've watched the whole series twice. I loved what they did with that.
Yeah. So like my points were twofold really. One is that the writers, directors, and actors gave the readers, gave the watchers exactly what they wanted, which was the big climatic battle. They had the space battle going on, which was absolutely epic and different as well in that scenario as well. So rather than sort of like the Battlestar Galactica like falling up and giving a broadside to a base star, it was something completely different, but still spectacular. You had the ground battle going on, and you had that deep personal battle going on with the characters sort of with I think it was the guy from Quantum Leap. I forget his name.
Scott Bakula.
No, not Scott Bakula.
No. The
hologram guy.
The hologram guy.
Yeah. You had him, and then you had the characters, and then they were having the say-to-say. You had that little piece of hope that there was going to be peace. And actually, by that point, it had been such a grueling experience. And it almost would have been a Deus Ex Machina if they turned around and said, yeah, we're going to shake hands now and be peace and have peace. And it didn't happen. It just didn't. And then all of a sudden, it descended back into a horrendous battle. And it was so gut-wrenching because you thought, like, the characters I've been following might have a way out of this, and they didn't. And then he escaped. But then, crucially, back to my original point, which was you had a chance to say goodbye to the characters. So each of the key characters and actually the popular secondary characters, you had a good 5-10 minutes or so of screen time with each of them, just to like see what was going to happen with them, where they were going to be in the future, what was happening with them. And then you didn't need anything more. There was nothing more required. You know that, like, Adama, he escaped with the president. Rosalind. He went to like an uninhabited section, and they lived together, like, alone until she died, and then he probably stayed there. You had Agathon, the pilot who'd been trapped for ages on Caprica. He set up a family. You had Starbuck. You got the ambiguous sort of kind of thing with Starbuck. But then, crucially as well, you had the whole destiny of humanity thing. You knew that at the end of it, because it cuts like 100,000 years into the future, you knew that humanity was okay. All their events that they'd happened had preserved humanity. And then, the whole...
I was going to say, which kind of leads to your climax ending part, right? Because you have the climax of them having the final battle with the Cylons at the space station, and it's huge, and everybody's involved, and you have all the characters that are all doing different things for this battle. And then you have the ending where they fly the fleet into the sun, and you fast forward to modern day. So the whole time you're like, this is in the future. This is in the future, right? This is so far in the future. It's crazy. And then you get to the very end of the series and you realize, oh, this is our past.
Yeah. And this is how humanity ended up on Earth.
Right. And so it's just, it was such a cool deal. And it kind of is like a twist at the end. It's not really a twist, because it doesn't change anything about the story, but it's a neat little that's pretty cool. I think we should move in. Go ahead, Ralph.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, I kind of wanted to hit into a couple twist endings, but before we do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about Mistborn, not because I wanted to, because I didn't want to, but Lauren Moore brought it up. No, I specifically said I was not going to talk about it, and then Lauren Moore brought it up.
Josh wanted to talk about it.
No, Lauren Moore brought it up. That's the only reason to talk about it, because Lauren Moore brought it up. She brought it up in the Facebook group, and I said, now that she brought it up, we can talk about it. So when we talk about twist endings, Mistborn, The Final Empire. Well, first of all, I'll just say that all 3 books are phenomenal, and the endings of all the books are ridiculously good. For this episode specifically, I'm just going to talk about the ending of The Final Empire because I don't want to ruin the rest of them. So, spoiler alert, I'm going to ruin the end of The Final Empire. So, if you don't want to listen to it, don't. but this kind of takes all the different pieces that we've been talking about in this show and today and put them all together. So all the little itty bitty things that you read in the story that you're like, this seems kind of neat, but why is that important? Or maybe you don't even think that it's important. They're seeded in there to make the ending plausible. And basically the Final Empire is it's basically a heist novel, which is actually why I didn't read it for so long, because I didn't want to read a heist novel, but that's how Sanderson portrays it. And so it's a group of people that band together to fight against the Lord Ruler, this evil emperor that is ridiculously evil, and he's got these obligators and these inquisitors that it's a very totalitarian. Yep, that's the one. And they control every bit of life. And so these people want to bring the Lord Ruler down. And this book is based on metals, and the magic involved in metals is very complicated, but it's very well done. And you get to the end, and Vin has this earring. Vin is one of the main characters. Vin has this earring that she's had since she was a little girl. And this earring, which has seemingly nothing to do with the entire story, has a huge impact at the end, because the way that the magic works is you have to have metal in your body, and there's other aspects of the metal that or the magic system that take into account piercings and how those piercings are done through multiple people. And this earring plays a huge part in the finale of the book, because while it's in the antagonist, if you will, has power over Vin, but when she takes it out, he no longer has that power over her, and that is how she pulls some other power in to defeat the Lord Ruler, right? Because the Lord Ruler is he's immortal. Yeah, he's lived for 1,000 years. No one can ever get close to him. No one can ever touch him, and she does. What's great about this whole thing is that after she kills him, after she defeats him, he's laying there dying, and he looks up and says, "I have been protecting you my entire life, and that is gone now. You are all going to die." And that's basically how the first book ends.
That's kind of an oh shit moment, isn't it?
Yeah. So that ending was like, holy crap, that is what does he mean? What's going on? And that forces you into the next book. And I actually held off reading the next book because I was like, there's no way you can beat the ending of the first book. And then it did. And then so did the third book. But the way that he crafted everything in the book to lead up to that point was just phenomenal. And then that ending point has just a huge impact on everything that's happening in the world. Phenomenal ending, in my opinion. And Lauren brought it up, so I had to talk about it.
So crucially, what are you kind of alluding to? And forgive me, I haven't read the Mistborn series. Is that you've got some things like small and relatively inconsequential seeming, which has suddenly grown into massive significance. So it kind of almost a reverse Chekhov's gun in that situation. So
right.
So throughout, would it be wrong to say that throughout the book you would have that earring being mentioned a disproportionate amount of times? You'd be like, why do I care about the earring? Why do you keep banging on about the earring? I don't care about it.
And that's interesting because I didn't the first read through didn't really pick up on it that much because it's so subtle that he doesn't go out of his way to mention it. It's so subtle that you would just read through it. It's just there. You read through it like I'm sitting on a chair. And you read through it and you just say, the chair is comfortable. But by the end, you get to, it's a rocket chair, right? You're like, oh. But it's just so subtle and so well crafted, and even some aspects of the earring that like for instance, she imagines her dead brother, talking to her, and she talks back to him through the entire book. And when you get later on through the series, you realize it's not really her brother talking to her. It's not her imagination. It's somebody actually talking to her. And the reason somebody's actually talking to her like that is because of the earring.
Shit,
and so it's just, I'm telling you, this is why I am such a huge Sanderson fan, because he does it with every single one of his books. Every single one of his books are well thought out, well plotted. The characters are phenomenal, and just the little things are just crazy great when you read them all. And the second, like they always say, some books are better the second time through. The Mistborn books are phenomenal the second time through, because you pick up on all that little stuff that you missed the first time, or that you read over and you're like, oh, that's neat. But then you read it the second time and you're like, oh, that's badass.
I'd take sort of that point, and Dan Simmons is a perfect example of that as well. So the Hyperion Cantos, those 4 books, they're perfectly cyclical, and you have you read through the first one. There's a bunch of events that happen throughout the 4 books. And you kind of you're not wondering what each of them themselves are, like massively dramatic events, but perhaps they don't have an overall context you understand until you get to the end. And then as soon as you get to the end, I remember as soon as I got to the end of The Rise of Endymion, I was like, everything has made sense that happened throughout the whole series. Now I have to immediately go back to the start of the first one and read it again, but with that foreknowledge that sort of, oh, that's happened. I get why that's happened now. This has happened. I get why this has happened now. If I may now, I'd like to sort of like more kind of like sort of go on to a more on the nose sort of endings, and sort of
let's hit Dean Floyd's question up first, and then we'll move on to that. Dean asks, how do you deliver an epic ending as opposed to a quote that was okay ending? He says, I've heard move up your original ending to the midpoint that forces you to come up with an epic ending. I don't know about that. I think if you've got a really good ending, and this is where Ralph's thoughts of pantsing and plotting come into play, and I don't know that we'll have enough time to touch on that, but so we just talked about Mistborn and Sanderson and epic endings as Sanderson does. The way Sanderson comes up with those endings is he writes backwards, and he doesn't actually write backwards, but he comes up with everybody's talking about the trash can. He comes up with an ending that is really, 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 really cool, and then he plots backwards so that everything that happens before that is building to that epic ending. So by the time you get to that ending, it's inevitable and it's awesome and it's satisfying. And so, like Ralph, you mentioned before the show talking about plotting and pantsing, and sometimes like this happens with Stephen King a lot. If you read a lot of Stephen King books, the build is there, the characters are there, the story is there, and as you're reading, you're like, oh, this is so good, this is so good, this is so good. And then somebody's a psychic and they just blow up everything and it's done. And that's because Stephen King doesn't plot. He pantses and he just takes it where the story goes. And so you don't have that epic conclusion, that epic, like satisfying feel that you do with, say, one of Sanderson's books, or even Harry Potter, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and that's endings like Harry Potter, endings like what you're describing with Sanderson. I mean, those are definitely constructed to be satisfying.
Yep.
King notoriously just sort of lets things, kind of just peter out, so to speak. He just
reach some form of natural conclusion.
Yeah. Right. And which, it's obviously worked for him to a certain degree. But you know, I don't know that that is necessarily the most satisfying way, because you know, you want people to walk away with, wow, that was awesome, what a great experience, I want to talk about it, and not walk away with, well, it was okay until,
Right.
you know? So now somebody here, who was it? Let's see. Oh, and to Dean's question about the epic endings, I think that really is very story dependent too. What kind of story are you telling? You know, but I don't think moving up a natural ending would necessarily help with that.
Which is a good point too, because some, and Ralph, I want to get back to what you were trying to say here in a minute, but some endings don't have to be epic, right?
No.
Like if you're writing, like for instance, there's you know, if you're writing military science fiction, or you're writing a thriller or something like that, so a lot of audiences aren't looking for a earth-shattering conclusion to what you're doing. They just want a satisfying ending. So
Yeah.
if your satisfying ending in your genre is having a kind of a blow up, shoot 'em up type of ending where the bad guy is defeated and the good guys win, then that's a great satisfying ending in that genre. There are very few books and very few stories, in my opinion, that have like that kind of earth-shattering, like, holy crap, we really, really, really need to talk about this ending.
Right.
And so, Ralph, what did you want to talk about earlier?
Yeah, there's kind of two endings which really struck out for me as being excellent endings to series that were completely satisfying. One of them got screwed up after the event, but you know that I appreciate that's a little bit controversial. So the two endings that I kind of thought of, that I'll cover the quicker one first, was that the movie Dunkirk. So, right, again, well, it's not even a spoiler warning, because like everyone knows roughly the story of Dunkirk, but the movie Dunkirk covers three plot arcs. So there's a plot arc with a bunch of soldiers trying to evacuate from the beach of Dunkirk, and that story takes place over the period of a week. There's a story of a ship that is sailing from Britain to go to Dunkirk to rescue some soldiers and then come home, that takes place over a day. And then there's a story of a fighter pilot who's fighting a kind of a desperate last stand sort of battle over the skies of Dunkirk, which take place over an hour. And so each of these, and it sounds like it should be a really confusing narrative. Trust me, if you haven't watched the movie, it works completely. But each of those three stories are, you think, completely isolated until they slowly draw together into an epic conclusion. Now, this conclusion, as I recall from watching the movie, and it's been about 6 months or so, happens over about 10 seconds worth of screen time. It's like kind of a flash and it's done. But the actions of the soldiers who are trying to evacuate from the coast, the ship that is trying to evacuate another bunch of soldiers from the coast, and the fighter pilot, you know, it all comes together in 10 seconds. You know, sort of like one saves the day of another, who saves the day of another, and they don't even meet, and it's just such a
right.
The only word, and it's going to sound utterly pretentious, is a beautiful ending. Like, no one really, it's just so epic in sort of its understatedness. You know, it's a deeply personal, small story, and each of them is telling a little part of it. And then, you know, maybe it's like the guy waving after the fighter cockpit, not metaphorically speaking, to the guys on the coast, who are then sort of like signaling the guys on the ship. It's kind of that kind of thing. It sort of all sort of ties in together, and it all makes sense. So that is one really good ending that just absolutely makes sense. The other one I wanted to touch on was Return of the Jedi. Now, the reason I want to touch on this because it's one that everyone knows, and it's you've got sort of a multi. I was trying to come up with a term for it when we were doing the research. A multi-theatre ending, where each of your protagonists has a role to play in securing a positive ending for the whole of the series.
Yeah.
So you've got the ground battle happening on Endor, you've got the space battle happening over Endor, and then you've got Luke versus Vader and the Emperor in the throne room. And each one of those is absolutely crucial to securing the the total victory of the scenario. And again, it's somewhat similar to sort of Battlestar Galactica thing. It gives everyone exactly what they want. So, for the guys who want the lightsaber duel, they've got the lightsaber duel. For the ones who want the big sort of like space battle that's occurring, well, it's the best space battle in my humble opinion in the whole of the Star Wars saga. And for those who want the ground battle that's occurring, maybe it's not quite on the Battle of Hoth scale, but it's still. Yeah, still a good ground battle that happens.
That's Scott. Holy shit, he made it
with 3 minutes to
go. Ladies and gentlemen, Skynet has released Scott Moon from his prison.
Checking for nanites.
I don't think we can actually hear him.
Can't hear him.
Oh, good, we can see him. Continue on, Ralph.
I've been mooned out here. My point was is that you've got every facet that you wanted. Now, one of the interesting things that occurred to me when I was actually talking to my girlfriend, who was looking at me kind of abusedly and saying, "What the hell are you banging on about here?" Was that with the Star Wars saga, you've got 3 heroes in the Star Wars saga. So you've got Luke, you've got Han, and you've got Leia. Like, I'm willing to open that up to debate, but would you guys roughly agree?
I think you're right. Yeah, that's it.
So, and you've got 3 theaters of battle at the end, which have to have success, but only 2 of them have the key heroes involved.
Right.
So the big space battle doesn't. You've got the Darth Vader versus Luke. That's got one of the heroes, and then you've got the Battle of Endor, which has got Han and Leia. It perhaps, and with the benefit of hindsight, and far be it for me to sort of like to say to George Lucas, "This is how you should have done it," but perhaps giving each of those heroes one of those theaters to sort of come out with that resolution would have been a more complete ending than we had. So, for example, having Han Solo doing the space battle, having Leia doing the ground battle, having Luke doing the Darth Vader battle would have been seemed a little bit more complete to me, and given each of those heroes an epic resolution in their own regards. That's my kind of humble opinion. I haven't really had the time to expand on that point as much as I kind of perhaps wants to, but I'm too busy looking at Scott. He seems to be in the wilderness somewhere now.
He's smiling.
He can hear us, so that's a step in the right direction.
Can we hear him? No, we can't hear him.
We can't hear him. I love when he's on a fucking phone. He's gonna eat it here in a second.
I'm surprised there's any intact technology with a 20-foot radius of him.
I really agree with your assessment.
Show off his pecs at this point.
I really agree with your assessment of Return of the Jedi, because it really, as at the end of a trilogy, and we've got so many characters and so many plot lines and so many things happening, and it does a really good job of filtering all of those things into the climax to create a really kind of satisfying climax, but then at the ending rolling off and satisfying all of the little threads that we have, and with the celebration and everything that happens there. And so having a kind of that multifaceted ending to the story where it brings everything together, really well done and really exciting. Everybody had a part to play. If Han and Chewie and Leia didn't bring down the shield, then Lando and the weird fish alien guy couldn't go into the Death Star, and if Akbar didn't handle it, so you have all these things working together. And I thought it was a really, really neat and really well done ending to the original trilogy. And we don't talk about the prequels. We barely talk about the sequels. I'll talk about Rogue One all day.
I'll talk about the prequels. I won't talk about the sequels because they were yeah.
So one ending that I wanted to talk about that we really didn't have a time to talk about, and we'll go for a couple of minutes. I'm okay if you guys are okay.
I'm good. I'm going to have to just dart away for a second then.
All right.
Away.
So one of the coolest endings that I like is not only the twist ending, but the ambiguous ending, and an ending that makes sense in the general overall flow and theme of the movie. But then when it's done and it's over with, you're sitting there going, well, it could mean anything. And one of the greatest examples of that for me is Inception.
Right.
With Inception, you have basically people going into other people's dreams and doing different things on different levels. But when you get to the end of the movie, and they have these tokens, and when you get to the end of the movie, the main character's token is a top, and so he's said in the movie, if I spin this on the desk and it spins and then it falls over, that I know I'm in the real world. But if it keeps spinning, then I know that I'm in the dream world. And so at the very end of the movie, they go through all the different levels of the dreams. They go four levels down, which is the farthest anybody's ever gone into the dream world. And then you come out of it, and at the end of the movie, sets the top down and spins it, and then he walks off and goes and greets his kids, which has been his goal for the entire movie, is to get to his kids. And as you get to his kids, the camera kind of zooms back down and moves back down to the top,
and it does.
You see it spinning, and you see it wobble, and then it goes black, and the credit rolls. So
that makes me want to throw my popcorn bucket at the screen.
But because I love it. I love it because you look at it and you're like, was he dreaming or was he not dreaming? Is this whole thing a dream or what? Well, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the story is great.
Yeah, but I'm one of those. Number one, I don't like. Well, for the right story, I can tolerate an ambiguous ending. Right. I hate tragic endings.
Oh yeah, I'll give you that.
There's enough of that shit in the real world. I want a story where the hero wins, maybe his best friend dies or something, and he pays a price. But God damn it, I want some hope. I want the good guy to win and to run off with the love interest, and the bad guy gets his ass kicked. All that.
But see, what's great with Inception is you can visualize the happy ending. He is there with his kids. He's in the real world.
I don't know, man. That feels lazy to me. It feels. That's kind of like somebody said, "Okay, I can't really decide how to really firmly end this story and wrap it up nice and tight, but damn it, I don't want to do a Stephen King ending, so I'm just going to say fuck it in the middle of the ending and let the viewer figure it out." I mean, I don't know. They don't work for me. They don't work for me.
You know what, Chuck? I'm going to challenge you back there.
Oh, bring it.
I'm going to say that. I mean, you said that's lazy writing, but is that perhaps lazy viewing?
That's a valid argument. That is. I am speaking strictly from my own edification, my own personal taste. I don't care for them, but I do see your point as far as how you would like having that open-ended thing. You know. Right. So I mean, I just personally, I feel cheated.
Because I think that sort of 3 seconds after that ending, like either the top topples over or it carries on spinning, and then you as the viewer can decide which one of those happens. and then you can create that ending yourself to a certain extent. Yeah, actually, my natural inclination, Chuck, is to follow you. I'm a bit of a lazy kind of. I say lazy. That sounds overly critical. I kind of want it feeding to me a little bit. I want to know what the author or the creator of that piece's original vision is, rather than creating my own. But I kind of sort of appreciate that. They might want to let you sort of like almost like a choose your own adventure kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sort of like,
it's almost like a lot of short stories. A lot of short stories are like that. With it,
a short story I could get. I mean, it's short.
A lot of short stories let you kind of assume, right?
Yeah, but
what's the difference here?
I mean, you got a bigger investment in time. To me, it's a lot like a restaurant telling you to get your own drink. You know, you pay 100% of the money, but you have to do 20% of the work too. Fuck you! Okay. I don't want that.
All right. So
is it a drink or you can drink? In which case, I am quite up for that.
I'm right there. So okay, let's skip past ambiguous endings because this is the C. Stephen Manley love hour, and everybody agrees with Chuck and whatever. Everybody look. This is mostly this is like 30% my fucking show, so you have to agree with me.
30% of the time.
Not if the other 30% agree with Chuck, which is 60, me. And I agree with Chuck
of the time,
regardless, because he's got like that deep and hunky voice, which makes me want to like disappoint him, whatever.
First of all, 30% of the time I'm speaking, 60% of the time I'm right, and 100% of that time it doesn't matter what you guys say. So let's move on from ambiguous endings to twist endings, which is my second favorite ending of all the endings. And the twist endings that I like, of my favorite twist ending is 7. I'm gonna throw that
dude. Yes.
7 is probably my favorite twist ending. But the great thing about 7's twist, and also Fight Club, and we'll be talking about this the both, because Fight Club and 7. Oh, and Frailty. Rick has a really good point with Frailty. But Fight Club and 7 are the two best twist endings that were so inevitable they couldn't have ended any other way. And actually, I've read the actual ending for 7, and it was way different than it happened, but it was way more dramatic than it did. And so we've already got some 7 hate right here.
Well, I can see that though, for sure.
But it's huge, it's a tragedy. The ending of 7 is a huge tragedy, and you're like, that sucks. But the writing, the connection of that story is amazing. And so since everybody's hating on 7, we'll go right to Fight Club. And Fight Club, the ending of Fight Club, the movie and the book. And JR, you could just leave. So let's just kick JR.
How about The Usual Suspects? Anybody hate that? It's kind of the same thing.
Okay, I'll give you that's in my top 3. The Fight Club, The Usual Suspects, and 7. But by Fight Club or The Usual Suspects, twist was so well crafted through the entire movie that when it happened, you're like, yep.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's when the twist is like, oh, of course that's what it was. Even if I didn't see it coming. Yeah. That's the masterful.
You know what? I'm going to kind of like throw now. I'm going to throw something into the mix here. Firstly, I'm going to caveat it with I love the ending to Usual Suspects. I thought it was one of the best twists that I've ever kind of seen. However, in relation to the actual crafting of the ending, I thought that was perhaps we are harkening back to a Deus Ex Machina, but almost kind of a reverse one in terms of when you kind of when the camera's panning over sort of where he's got all the clues and hints from where he's put together a story from. So
it felt contrived to you.
Yeah, I would have almost rather it would have been that he'd been such a mastermind that he'd recrafted like because the problem is we came out at the end of Usual Suspects, we didn't know what was real and what was not. All we knew was that the battle on the boat had occurred, We don't know anything about what had occurred before, what the relationships were, and that kind of thing. So it's almost like anything before the boat just didn't matter in that story, in the movie. And that was my bugbear with it. I would have rather, that kind of cut-off point about what mattered and what didn't had been drawn back a little bit. But unfortunately, it was just in the finale. It was just in the final battle. And that's where I think it missed slightly.
And I think
that being said, I still think that kind of like with something going PG-13, that kind of like fuck me moment was still one of the best in movie history.
So I think this might be a great story to end on, and I want to talk this out as we talk it out. But let's call this the ending point of our show, as The Usual Suspects. So when you say we're talking about the I think Scott just fell down.
Just throw his phone, get pissed off.
He's just moving around the environment. We're in a car now.
What's great about it is he's yelling and he's upset at his phone, and we can hear nothing of what he's upset about, and I'm okay with that.
Poor guy.
So what's great about The Usual Suspects is Ralph, and I'll kind of disagree with you a little bit, and this is what makes the movie great, is that to get to the boat, you had to have the other stuff. And it doesn't matter whether it's accurate or not. I think the only thing that he changed was the names in relation to the board. Everything else was true. And you had to have all that stuff to push them to the boat. If you didn't have the lineup at the beginning, and you didn't have the other smaller incidents that happened through that movie, you wouldn't have got all those guys to the boat. You're right. The boat is the main point of the whole thing. But if you didn't have all the rest of it, you wouldn't have got there. And
it wouldn't have had as much impact and meaning.
Right. And I think the cool thing about it is the way that they crafted it to make it seem like it was Gabriel Byrne's character the entire time. And that when they built Keyser Söze's character, they built it in such a way that you're like, none of these characters that we're watching right now could possibly be Keyser Söze. And then at the twist, when you see it happen and Verbal Kint becomes Keyser Söze, you're like, oh my God, that is awesome.
Yeah, I remember he's walking with a limp and it gradually becomes a normal stride.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all. It was just
because
really
that makes it because him sitting in the police station telling that story is basically him giving the finger to all these cops that think they're so smart that they're going to track down Keyser Söze. And Keyser Söze is like, I'm smarter than every single one of you guys because I'm sitting here talking to you right now, and you have absolutely no idea.
Clue,
no clue whatsoever that this is the biggest criminal mastermind you've ever talked to.
One of the things I kind of took from Usual Suspects was that he was such a criminal mastermind that even put on the spot so completely. He was just sat down in an office, almost like Josh and Scott are cops. And, the majority of kind of like sort of like your big offenders. They aren't captured through some kind of like. Covulated investigation. They're captured through a random stop check.
Right.
Right. And they're just nicked for something absolutely random. Then you're doing your background and you realize, oh fuck, they're wanted for a murder back like 3 years ago.
Absolutely. Yep.
And what I liked about Keyser Söze was that he was put in that situation pretty much, and he managed to craft enough of a story out of what the material he had in front of him to kind of get him out the door and get him walking. And it was only
he almost put himself in that situation on purpose.
Yeah, I kind of never got why really, but
I think what he wanted to know, I think why he did it on purpose is because he wanted to know what the cops knew.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He wanted to know what they knew.
He wanted to know exactly how much they knew about him And so he put himself in that situation to find out if they actually knew anything about him, which they still don't. Like by the end of the movie, when he walks out, yeah, they know what he looks like, but they still don't know who he is. They still don't have any idea about his holdings or any of his businesses or anything. They have no idea at all.
Wait, I think I heard Scott. Do I hear
I can
Scott?
hear him moving around, but I don't know what's going on. Oh, I can barely
I
hear
heard
him.
a voice.
Hold your microphone up to your mouth. Put it in your mouth,
This
Scott.
this is like an episode of Stranger Things, isn't it? We're getting a little hint of Scott coming through the.
I was
the
starting to
other
think
side.
he'd been abducted. I keep seeing like the eave of a house, the inside of a car. Now I'm seeing a bare wood ceiling. I mean, it's kind of creepy.
Have you ever
Like an
seen
episode of
Sneakers?
Dexter.
Like, what did it sound like, Scott?
Who knows what this is? Does anybody know what this is?
Barely hear you. It looks
hold
like
it-
a
hold-
reloader.
Either hold the phone or the microphone right in front of your mouth because you're really, really hard to hear.
Can you hear me now?
Barely.
Barely, dude.
Can you hear
You're
me
very
now?
staticky.
Can you hear me now?
If we're all very, very quiet. no,
Everybody,
it
let's be
lasts long.
all quiet. Let's be really super quiet. And he's got pink headphones.
Testing 1, 2. Another, my daughter.
Hey,
I love the
so-
I love the idea that actually, you know, we've been so focused on this show that an alien invasion has happened, and Scott's trying to warn us all about.
Unicorns, nice.
Not only is he
Yeah,
trying to
but-
warn us all, but he's trying to warn us with unicorn earphones. Like that's like the greatest. I think Scott, if you, I don't know if you can take the headphones out or twist the thing because it sounds like the things aren't plugged in all the way. So I don't know if the headphones aren't plugged in all the way because now I can't hear you at all. When the earphones were plugged in, I could hear you just a little bit, but you might want to like shove it all the way in there. Make it,
You did.
Give
No, dude, it's still bad. Still
give it a
bad.
climax.
It's not worth it.
There you go.
There
Heard
we
that.
go.
Can you
Just
hear me
scream. We're about to wrap the show up, but I mean, you know.
Yeah.
now? I'm glad I could be here for the end.
Should we get Scott to do the
It's an
ending?
epic ending. Epic ending.
Yeah, he needs to do the outro.
I think Scott needs to do the outro. Should we leave it to Scott to do the?
I think we should. I think we really should. Well, we
He's all-
covered.
Outro's right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Whoa! First of
That's a
all,
big-
being like 9,000 feet above sea level has screwed with Scott a little bit. If you didn't know.
And clearly his microphone.
Well, I think we're gonna need to do another episode on endings because there were like several stories that I didn't get to
It's a
that I wanted
bunch
to
of
get
stuff we
to.
didn't get to. Yeah,
And,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could probably go on for another hour. But
easily.
next week we're going to be doing our first. Well, it's not our first; it's our second critique, but our first viewer submitted short critique, and that's of Luke Bartlett's novel or Bard of Today. Submitted some material for us to look over, so we're going to be looking over that this week, and then critiquing it on the show this next Monday. And that should be, I think it should be a good time. Then after that, we have Autumn and Jasper coming on the show to talk about their fantasy business website. Now I can't. Well, I don't know why it's slipping my mind, but it's a really cool deal. She's been on the show before. It's Autumn. Is it Autumn Kurt? Autumn Burt. And then Shannon Meyer is going to be on after that, and hopefully Scott will not be lost in the barrens of Denver for that because
Yes, he's in bad places.
But everybody that came and hang out with us tonight, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with us. We had a really good time kind of going back and forth over different endings and endings that people hated and endings that people liked. We'll have to do another show on that because I think we could probably talk about probably for hours about more endings that we liked and more endings that maybe we should do a show of endings that we didn't like.
Yeah, that's one thing we didn't get to that I kind of wanted to. What ones we didn't like and why they didn't work.
Right. And not just because the Deus Ex, whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
And I saved my.
I love your
F-bombs.
articulateness.
I saved my
That's-
F-bombs for the end of the show because apparently you can't watch the show with kids if there's a whole bunch of F-bombs in the front of the show. So,
Oh,
oh,
really?
and
Sorry
then
about that.
Rick wants to have talk about happy endings too, which is kind of the same thing as a climax, but we'll get to that in further episodes. So everybody,
Definitely
that came
not
out,
with kids
Who's
around.
doing that the after midnight episode of Keystroke Media,
KSM
Keystroke
After Dark
Media
is what it is.
Nice.
covering happy endings and climaxes.
Oh man, that's crazy. Everybody that come and hang out with us, thank you so much. Come back next time. We're going to talk about some reading, we're going to talk about some writing, and of course everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. You guys have a fantastic Monday. Bye.